Welcome back, rum fans. Today I'm going to be talking about your dark rum in cocktails. A lot of cocktail recipes that you see call for a dark rum. I'm going to help you. I'm going to give you a guided tour, talk you through some of your options that you've got, and kind of try and help you distinguish between what are dark rums and what some people think may be dark rums. Now, I know many of you will fall in love with dark rums because, in my opinion, they do give a better balance and a unique taste profile to some cocktails. And I should also add in Coke in there as well, because I'm a massive fan of dark rum and Coke. And obviously ginger beer as well, the dark and stormy. I kind of classify that as a cocktail, but rum and ginger beer in its own right, without the bitters, without the lime, you know, it's a dark rum kind of drink. So I understand why many people fall in love with it. But as with all categories of rum, there is so much variance. So a lot of you guys don't really know where to start. You don't really understand what dark rum is in the first place. And you kind of just maybe grab the cheapest or maybe grab the most popular brand. But actually that might not be the right thing to do. So which dark rums should you look at and potentially buy? That is what I'm going to try and help you with today. Now, as always, if you think I'm giving you good value and good knowledge, then make sure you smash that like button. That really helps me out. And if you like me and you want to sort of see me progress and help you at the same time progress on your rum journey, then make sure you are subscribed to all three of my rum channels. I've got this one where we talk about education more than anything. I've got my reviews channel where I kind of do a few rum reviews every single week. And then I've got the other channel, the extra channel, where I kind of focus on spiced rum and cocktails. So make sure there'll be a link below. Make sure you subscribe to all three of those. Now let's get back to dark rum. To many people, I know this is going to how this fall. They're going to be like, oh, hang on, you're missing the most famous dark rum of them all. And it's here. There's two bottles. US version, UK version. Very, very different rum. This is not a dark rum. This is a black spiced rum. If you have any of these, there is absolutely no similarity in taste between these and what this is. This is infinitely sweeter. I'm not saying super sweet, but this is infinitely sweeter with a healthy glug of vanilla to it. So do not think this is the same profile as any of those, because it's really not. Now, that's not a hate on Kraken. That's not to say this is not going to work in cocktails. It's just that if you are using this in cocktails, you bear in mind this is sweeter than those. You will have to adjust the balance of your cocktails to compensate with the sugar when you kind of go up, or different flavors when you go up against these. And a great example of that for me is if I'm going rum and Coke, Kraken will inherently be too sweet for me as a rum and Coke, whereas these dark rums will be bang on the money. But the other alternative to this, the ginger beer, you know, if I have dark rum and ginger beer, I'm totally happy with dark rum. If I have dark rum and ginger beer with Kraken, then I have to use quite a few dashes of Angostura bitters to cut the sweetness back in that, and then that becomes the dark and stormy. Now let's get real here for a second. As I've spoken about in multiple videos recently, there is no legal classification for dark rum. So dark rum could be anything in your little head, really. You know, if you think, oh, well, that's darker than that, you could classify that as a dark rum. Inherently, how I personally would explain dark rum is rum that is dark, near enough black in colour, that has derived its colour from one of two ways. There are some rums here that are actually, in fact, natural colouring, and that's come from a heavily charred barrel. And I'm not saying they're long aged at all. You know, I think the longest age we've got here is like 4 years old. But none of these are aged rums. Absolutely none of these have got. Sorry, the El Dorado 12. I've got that there. It's an exception. Ignore El Dorado 12 in a minute. I'll talk about that for a second. But none of these rums here are actually age statements. They might have a 4-year-old rum in the blend, but actually, they're pretty much unaged rums. They've got lots of unaged rums in there. They've simply been 6 months in a heavily charred barrel, maybe a year in a heavily charred barrel, or that lovable substance we affectionately call E150A, which is actually not a sweetener as such. Caramel, even, you know, homemade caramel, it does have that bitter element to it. So don't think these are infinitely sweet rums. They've just been coloured up. And just to clarify one point, because I've had two people come at me for this as well, it doesn't matter if a rum has a 4-year-old in it, or a 10-year-old in it, or a 25-year-old in it. if the youngest rum in that is 1 year old or unaged, it is an unaged rum. You always go by the youngest rum in the bottle. So even though some brands, as I say, have got 4-year-olds in them, if the youngest rum in there is unaged, it is an unaged rum. Now, to get onto El Dorado for a second here, I'll be honest, I don't know why this is classified as a dark rum. I've still never got my head around that. The same as Pampero is classified as a dark rum. I think it's because of Martin Kate in Smuggler's Cove, which inherently goes to the price of it back in the US, but I certainly wouldn't be using El Dorado 12-year-old as a dark rum in the UK. I'm not saying it doesn't make fantastic tasting cocktails. It does. But it is definitely not in the same vibes as what these dark rums here are. So, you know, that's my thing. I've mentioned it a couple of times with Smuggler's Cove. It's a fantastic book, but there are some things you kind of think, is that absolutely correct? Is that how you perceive things? You know, there is no right or wrong because there is no legal category. You know, there is no legal thing for it. So it's just how you interpret the dark rum category. But yeah, for the purposes of you guys in the US that pay stupid money for that, we kind of have to include it. But, you know, in the UK, it's not double the price, but it's a damn sight more expensive. So when it comes to the cocktails, I've made these cocktails a lot recently, so I'm not going to show you how to make them into cocktails. But the big 5 cocktails, drinks that you would have dark rum for are the rum and coke, the dark and stormy, or the rum and ginger beer. We're then going for a painkiller. We're going for a hurricane, and then actually a Mai Tai. Now, in all of those cocktails, as I've said time and time and time again, you do you with your preferred rum. For me, I'm a massive, massive advocate that they are dark rum drinks. The painkiller comes to life when you use dark rum. If you use, like, even if you use something like Appleton 8 or Barbados, Mount Gay and something, it's still not the same taste as what you get from using something like Pusses or OFTD or something like that. It's something that dark rum brings that it's just so unique to other rums, to aged rums. And that is with the dark and stormy as well. I'm not saying normal rum, aged rum. I'm not saying Appleton 8 doesn't work with ginger beer. Of course it does. But for that lovely, unctuous, dark and stormy rum and ginger beer vibe, they are your wheelhouse. And to come at this from a venue point of view, a pub bar point of view, I know full well that if I have a cocktail menu that says a dark and stormy, I know consumer palate, if I put any of those in a dark and stormy, I know they're going to outsell pretty much any of those. Whether you think they are better rums or not, I know from a consumer market point of view, these are just going to make better tasting drinks. Now, as I said at the top, all of these have their own unique taste profiles, even within the category of dark rum, which isn't actually legally a category, but they all have very unique, different taste profiles. So they will ultimately bring different sort of taste to your drink. So I can't give you the full lowdown, but I'm going to give you a brief guided tour of where I think you should sit. So to go to the first camp, the sweeter, more unctuous, more kind of, oh, I like that sort of camp. I would kind of have to go Pusser's Gunpowder Proof, OFTD, actually Demerara sits in there, and what's the other? I would actually put El Dorado 12 in there as well. Sorry, Demerara, Skipper in there. They are my kind of go-to unctuous, absolutely gorgeous painkillers, you know, Mai Tais, that kind of stuff. Rum and cokes, I would quite happily sit on them. Now, I'm fully aware in the US, but this is pretty much the UK brands, all right? I'm fully aware that there's a few like Hamilton and what's the other one? Denizen, we don't get in the UK, all right? That's why I never feature them. We don't get them here. The same vein that you won't get that in the US either. That is very much a UK brand. So I'm aware that there's certain brands that you guys in the US would kind of put here as well. But from the rums available in the US, and I dare say around Europe as well, what's the other one? Karuba is another one we don't get here, even though it's flipping bottled in Switzerland. You know, Jamaican rum, bottled in Switzerland, we don't get it in the UK. It goes straight back to Jamaica in the US for some stupid reason. I never got my head around that. Now, even with these rums that I've got here, there are some crossovers because What I was going to say is these would be Mai Tai rums as well. I would quite happily use these in my Mai Tai, but then I'm looking at that thinking, well, actually that needs to be in there as well, because that is a great Mai Tai rum. The difference between that for me, that's Jamaican rum and has got those inherent Jamaican vibes to it, whereas these give you those sort of rich, Demerara, dark rum vibes, which I absolutely love. I mean, you've got a healthy influence of Guyana in there, 100% Guyana in there, 100% Guyana in there, 100% Guyana in there. A lovely old Rose Mullier down in Cornwall produces what I think is some phenomenal liquid that kind of sort of competes at that level, sort of. I promise you, that's not me being patriotic. I genuinely think that's a cracking rum, but I know how that's going to come across to a lot of you. So just to emphasize, these 5 here are the all-rounders for me in those 5 cocktails. Rum and Cokes, 100%. Rum and Ginger Beers, 100%. The Mai Tai, definitely. The Painkiller, definitely. You know, that is the official Painkiller, but that really works well as well. And then the Hurricane, they give you exactly what you want in those drinks. But then without taking too much away from the drink, let's just take the Rum and Ginger Beer, for instance. I mean, let's be brutally honest here. I mean, that is the official dark with the N apostrophe, Stormy. Obviously, if you make a dark and with either the little symbol or A&D, you know, that's not a legal requirement. But if you make a dark with the apostrophe Stormy, that is the legal requirement. It's the same as the Pusser's Painkiller. If you make a Pusser's Painkiller, you have to use Pusser's rum. But if you just make a Painkiller, you can use whatever you want. It doesn't matter, you know. So, you know, there's certain legal requirements there within this category. But let's be brutally honest, that makes a really good rum and ginger beer. It's not my favourite, you know, they are, but it's still pretty damn good. I would say it doesn't have those rich, robust notes that those do. It is a little bit, I wouldn't, dry is the wrong word because they're not sweet, but it's not quite as, I keep saying this word recently, unctuous. It's not quite as unctuous as what they are. And then when we talk about, you know, let's get honest here for a second about Woods. You know, Woods, I'll be honest, by Pussers. It is just a better rum. Or if you want to be, because these are both Guyana rums, you know, they both come out of DDL. You know, they're just very different vibes, but that one does the job better. And then you've got Myers, which again is a great dark rum. It makes great dark and stormies. It makes great rum and cokes, but for me just lacks a little bit in like drinks like a Mai Tai, in the Hurricane, in the Painkiller. It doesn't quite have that oomph in flavour that these do. But then just to focus on these 3, just so we've got them all in the picture here. Look, Barcello was a big surprise to me. Barcello, I actually really like. Again, you know, possibly because of the ABV, I think it's just under it, 37.5. It's got cracking flavour. It's just slightly a bit too thin for what I personally need it to do for me in those cocktails. But it's a great shout at the price. It is a great shout. Plantation OD, again, it's something, it's weird because I don't, even though it's original dark, I don't, in my head, classify it as a dark rum because it's not black. It's not, you know, you look at the colour of those 2 side by side, and even that's not as dark as what some of these are. I love Plantation to bits. Plantation are one of my passion brands. I absolutely love them to bits. But it's a great, decent rum and coke. It's a decent rum and ginger beer. But again, you know, I wouldn't use it in a Mai Tai. I wouldn't use it in the Painkiller. I mean, that smashes it hands down. And I certainly wouldn't use it in whatever, in the Hurricane that I've not mentioned. They just want lacking. But this is a unique beast in itself because this will give you those dark, lovely, unctuous dark rum vibes in a Mai Tai, with also doing the Jamaican job as well that you would potentially have in your rum blend. So it's a great rum for that. For me, it doesn't do the rum and coke and the rum and ginger bit, probably because out of all of these here is probably, actually that's a bit unfair because that's unsweetened as well. I was probably going to say it's the only one that is unsweetened, but that is unsweetened as well. And I know that's got, not many people realise that is actually unsweetened. You know, that's just the rum that's doing the work in there. So for me, there's a huge difference. We know that, but there's a huge difference between Guyana rum and Jamaican rum in those rich Demerara vibes, and that hasn't got that what I personally need. But it's a great Mai Tai rum. Now, I haven't had viewer feedback in a few videos, so I keep forgetting to ask you guys questions, but what I definitely want you more experienced dark rum fans to do is in the comments below, drop your favourite dark rum, your go-to dark rum, and then drop your favourite dark rum cocktail. Are you one of those, do you make one of those 5 that I've mentioned, the rum and coke, the dark rum and ginger beer, dark and stormy, the hurricane, the Mai Tai, the painkiller? Do you make those, or have you got something else in your locker?